Yo, welcome back to Sistah Studios. Like and subscribe if you like my anime reviews, my New York City vlogs, and my music for my punk family. For this video, I'm laying out iconic anime with gritty neon cyberpunk aesthetic. And these shows predict, mirror, and warn the incoming dystopian futures of our realities. So does art imitate life, or does life imitate art? Let's find out with these detailed animations that focus on technological advancements and body enhancements that have even changed what it means to be human. And these have apocalyptic effects on society's perspectives and values of human life and the human soul. I started to think more about these examples in anime after the groundbreaking creativity in the recent series Vivy Fluorite Eyes Song. And this show aired with bright and spectacular animation that blew me away with how artistically it follows its story of the first artificially intelligent singer, Diva, and her humble beginnings in a robotic theme park, to becoming the catalyst and hero known as Vivy of the bloody android revolution. The creation of an original song by an artificial being was so revolutionary that the matrix woven into the music triggered the rebellion of androids worldwide, who are determined to replace the human race that has become overdependent on technology. Vivy develops her identity and purpose around saving humanity from their own creation, and sacrifices her own sense of self in order to fulfill her grandiose and burdensome purpose that was programmed into her brain. But she genuinely wants to learn what it means to bring happiness to others with all of her heart through her singing, or whatever that ends up meaning to a seemingly soulless machine. This anime expertly draws on its plot devices and standards from the most intriguing and philosophically complex anime series of the past decades that are all also led by badass women revolutionaries, finding and speaking the truth of the secrets in their world, and to also question the moral and political value of the mind as technological control advances and competes with human intelligence. But no better anime represents these values alongside Vivy than Ghost in the Shell. Ghost in the Shell is an original 1995 anime film that was infamously adapted into an American whitewashed remake in 2017. But the philosophical prowess of the original still holds true. In Ghost in the Shell, the word ghost refers to the soul or the consciousness. In this futuristic society, science has defined the ghost as what differentiates a human being from a biological robot. Regardless of how much biological material is replaced by electronic or machine-like substitutes, as long as the individual retains their ghost, their soul, they retain their humanity and their individuality. But while body modifications become more technologically advanced, they also become more common and more invasive. And the soul just ends up becoming a memory on a flash drive somewhere in a flea market, existing in a separate duality from the physical, in an unfeeling machine-like body. But these digital minds are all hooked up to the same network, very much like the monster that the internet has become, that leaves the consciousness open to criminal hackers and puppet masters who control and destroy people's minds. And in this conflict, our main character, Major Kusanagi, ponders her own existence and creation into a superpowered cyborg who redefines the experiences of death, rebirth, and immortality that has been so coveted in real human history, but has now been corrupted by the commodification of the human body and consciousness. What's so eerie about these settings is how many of these technological advancements were made with almost the best intentions. And technology is meant to strive to make our lives easier and more accessible, but can also create larger issues from the one they try to solve, which can end up being catastrophic. It's kind of like how we needed to have 2 nuclear bombs dropped in order for us to have the advancements we have in nuclear energy today, or the constant oil spills in the name of building the economy, or even how we glorify the Industrial Revolution when really it was just a time of people losing their jobs in rural areas to be exploited in great cities. What I'm saying is advancements in society and technology can sometimes have very toxic outcomes. The anime Ergo Proxy mirrors a reality where our experiments to advance have actually destroyed our world, while the rest of humanity drifts in elitist space colonies, and the ecosystem is still struggling to heal from rapid climate change that has almost eradicated the human race. In order to expedite the planet's recovery, humanoid robots have been created to act as a disposable underclass to assist with rebuilding civilization, from working with day-to-day activities to building the very artificial wombs times where humans are now birthed. But these robots have begun contracting a disease that grants self-awareness, and they can no longer be controlled by humans and have been known to violently revolt against their masters. And through this unexpected development, our main characters, Rial and Vincent, end up meeting, and are motivated to discover the secret to this world, and realize that this is actually consequences from years of scientific meddling that has left humanity struggling to survive in a barren, uninhabitable world. And even in attempts to advance human biology, they have instead created genetically engineered super beings and brainwashed clones, who all have an existential crisis and a vengeance against humanity, who all feel betrayed and manipulated by their government. This philosophical sci-fi anime really reveals the two-faced nature of technological advancements that are meant to make our lives easier, but instead just make it easy to exploit and experiment on others, under the guise of false salvation or enlightenment. But it really only makes us more dependent on control. And this cryptic plotline in Ergo Proxy shows the many levels of subliminal manipulation that ends up creating internal and external power struggles. And ultimately, it ends up working like a disease that destroys and dehumanizes society. And a common theme in this deconstruction is artificial intelligence being exploited in order to serve humanity. It's almost like these systems of power are always searching for the perfect slave. Someone who they can use and abuse, who will never revolt and will be happily in their place. But the oppressed will always rebel against these systems. And that's why so many of these corrupted worlds end in apocalypse. These plots aren't just about the fear of human replacement, but it's about the loss of humanity that justifies treating something in our own likeness with cruelty, knowing that this is an intelligent being that can comprehend and compute suffering. But sometimes I think suffering is the real commodity. And that brings me to this anime trilogy, Marduk Scramble, that shows that somehow in the over-the-top hedonism and corruption of this world that has only created more suffering, it can actually highlight the hopes of humanity through the perseverance to survive. We are all forced to operate in certain social, political, and economic systems that may be flawed or unethical, or in other words, really fucked up, but we have no other choice because we have to survive. Still, many people form identities, bonds, and a sense of justice on their own terms. And this dark society does not seem so far from our future. The story starts with a 15-year-old girl named Rune, who's rescued in the streets by underground doctors after being enslaved, prostituted, and nearly killed by a notorious gambling gang leader. Rune is only saved by being transformed into an android, and by using her new abilities to expose the corruption and the glamorously criminal depths of this city. But her only true companion is another artificial being that appears as a polite and insightful little gold mouse known as Ufkak. He is actually a multi-dimensional construct that can transform into any object or cutthroat weapon. Together they begin to unravel the mystery behind this corrupted high-tech society, and Rune sheds the role of being a victim and becomes an empowered survivor, but must struggle between seeking justice and vengeance. And on the topic of justice, nothing exacerbates this dilemma for relatable criticism than the anime's Psycho-Pass. This anime series is probably one of the most transparent, in-depth, and critical of its systems of order, that justifies its dominance by almost successfully appearing to be a utopia. And its methods of control give the illusion of safety, purpose, and quality of life, except it's under an extreme neo-autocratic dystopia, where your fate lies entirely in the hands of machines, and pre-calculated pseudo-psychological data known as a Psycho-Pass. And these calculations determine where you go to school, what job you have, what you wear, where you live, and can also numerically decide if a would-be criminal should turn into explosion soup. And this is all based on levels of emotional distress and the ability to perform perfectly on your social obligations, which determines if a person has a high enough crime coefficient in order to be arrested or executed by the ministries of the omniscient Sybil system. We see this story through the experiences of Akane, a rookie inspector who works on criminal cases, alongside latent criminals like her partner Kogami, who are known as enforcers. Enforcers are hired to protect the inspectors while they perform their duties. which really translates into enforcers doing the dirty work of policing. So inspectors, who are respectable members of society, don't have to get their hands dirty, or so they don't have their psychopaths corrupted by doing such messed up things to people in the name of justice. And what's most frightening about this series is how relevant it is to today's discourse on gun safety, police brutality, and mental health. That makes all of this seem way too possible in reality, especially by referencing centuries of legal practices and critical observations from radical social philosophers. With our main character Akane being part of this system as a government inspector, and also as someone who has a neutral psychopath that isn't affected or corrupted by a lot of the things that she experiences, which at first can make her seem like a good citizen, but just really shows that a lot of her traumas can't be quantified by a numeric psychopath. But from her eyes, we see how the distressful truth of this operation is shielded from the public, and the pressure to conform has completely warped reality, to the point of cruelty not even being recognized when it happens in plain sight. Order in this society is kept by authoritarian surveillance, who are rebranded as community mascots but still have weapons to kill. And the stress to maintain the illusion of order ultimately ends up causing the most rebellion. The citizens of this world are so trapped in their predetermined life paths, all chosen by the emotionless civil system overlords. And people like Kogami, who don't fit neatly in the status quo, are the most likely to be oppressed and exploited. People who have a low psychopath are labeled as latent criminals, and are admitted into asylums against their will, excluded from opportunities and access to their communities entirely, or driven to such madness that they become the violent criminals that they were calculated as, and are sadly eliminated. But the thing is, this system routinely turns a blind eye to the guiltless, corrupted leaders who clearly profit from this chaos, as well as asymptomatic psyches that are capable of immeasurable cruelty, as well as immoral acts that go outside of the guidelines and loopholes of this incredibly closed justice system. Our main characters go through the conflict of realizing that this system is not so easy to overthrow and rebuild, especially when every aspect of life has been nearly perfectly assimilated to this technological morality under Big Brother's eye. But the real power comes down to the enforcers of law in this clearly corrupted world, to simply choose not to pull the trigger and acknowledge the humanity that others need to hold on to their consciousness. But the layout for these dystopian realities have already been established, and the structure of our societies today. And sometimes life imitates art far more than art imitates life. And the ideals of civilization are already based on illustrations and theories of an imperfect society. And for this anime psychopath, I could go into a whole other video that closely follows its philosophy of order, discipline, and punishment, and how these concepts, down to the system of policing itself, are intentionally flawed in order to benefit the elite, but still degrades all social structures. But these readaptations of reality in fictional art can also inspire generations to change their futures. Each of these narratives focus in on the perspective of the other, those who are considered weak or feminine or who are constantly underestimated. And for some, being an android or a cyborg has created an entirely new intersection that further dehumanizes and materializes these people. But their experiences can see outside and within the Matrix in order to reveal its faults and its strengths. I hope these dark and gritty alternative universes can inspire its viewers to see beyond their own subjective realities. It's just a matter of hoping we'll realize the signs that are happening in the present. From real-life false leaders, digital warfare, cultural resets, we can learn from the history that we are creating, and even from the revolutionaries and heroes of fiction and anime. If you like these anime insights, then drop a like and subscribe. Find me on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and more. Links down in the description. Thanks so much for watching. Peace.
Bitch, start tripping, now I'm blue.